It's good to be here today. And my name's Bruce Morrison, and I've lived in the Met House since 1975, and raised a family up Twist River. I live in the town of Twist now, and I've been involved in. I've been a working artist for a lot of my adult life, but I've also uh, my career has been largely just casual manual labor. I've worked in the woods a lot. I've run a chainsaw way more than I should have. I've worked for the Forest Service. I've, but you know, always I was drawn here to be outside, and so most of my uh, life and my art references the natural world. And I was a founder, one of the founders of the Confluence Gallery in 1988, and with the Wrangles and others. Um, I worked very actively with Methow Forest Watch on uh, sort of activism around the logging practices of that time that are very different than they are today, but called for a different approach. And then I've worked as a teaching artist through Methow Arts for the last 20 years, more or less. And that's kind of where I've kind of found my sweet spot, is teaching third graders, 8-year-olds, let me have your 8-year-olds. And it's just, teaching children is the most gratifying thing I've done. And I was a wood carver primarily as a teaching artist, as a working artist. And I worked in carving wood and stone for several decades here. And I have a lot of projects around the valley, most of them in private homes. And that was, I had a strong compulsion to carve. And I was troubled by the sense of impermanence that comes with carving wood, because wood deteriorates in this kind of climate if it's outdoors. And so then I got into stone carving as an antidote to that, and then realized stone also doesn't last. Nothing lasts. And so anyway, so I gave up on the lasting part, and teaching is wonderfully in the moment, and children are constantly teaching us, and so that's where I choose to spend the bulk of my time now. I love being in the classroom, and then I've got more and more family in the schools now, and I'm a huge fan of the Methow Valley schools. It's a wonderful thing. One thing I love about the Methow is it's a bounded world. It's basically bounded by mountains. It's a valley, it's a watershed, and it's in some, the metaphor of it being a basket that holds uh, it holds its own kind of presence and culture, or ecosystem, or whatever that is. And there most places in the world, just the edges just kind of go on forever. One suburb into another, and but the Methow gives you that sense of place, a defined sense of place. A big part of the experience of the Methow is the experience of limitation, and that there are a lot of things you can't do here. And certainly when I came here, it's almost 50 years ago, it was a whole different set of both limitation and opportunities then, but there was no art scene, there was no cultural scene, here. There was very little even music scene here. In the last decade or so, I've become very closely personally involved with a handful of remarkable native people from this region. And they've taught me a lot. But the first thing I had to learn was to shut up. I'm not doing a very good job of keeping quiet now, but I had to learn that. I had to learn how to listen, and listen more, and talk less. The other thing I had to get comfortable within myself is feeling awkward and uncomfortable, especially about hard issues of like why there aren't any native people in the Methow today, or so few. And there's some really uncomfortable truths in that, but that's not the main substance of the relationships. The relationships are personal, and they're I have no interest in that on an organizational level, but on a personal level, it's really rewarding. It gives me a sense of place and more importantly time that is totally different than anything we experience in our normal world here. Their sense of time, everything is present time, including events 10,000 years ago. When they're speaking of them, it's all present time. And so it kind of bends the mind a little bit about where things come from. And, there's a sense of reverence for life and living things that's embedded in their way of working with the world, and that sense of very carefully taking only as much as you really need and never any more. That's an important thing. It's wonderful to have amenities here, but we got to realize that the more amenities we create, we invite people that like amenities, and we leave behind a certain quality of having to come up with it yourself, with having to self-originate your entertainment, or your culture, and that I guess we're in some ways speaking to through media right now, but media invites voices from everywhere to show up any place, any time. And that was one thing that was very different about the Methow when I got here, is the voices and the beliefs and all here were remarkably uninfluenced by other places. I'd like to see people respect the work of coming up with it on their own, instead of, we need information from the wider world, but we also need to self-originate. And I think that's probably a large part of what people come here for, is a chance to come up with something out of their own inner resources that they can't find other places.